Shadow and light are very interesting topics in the art world because a lot of the time there's so much that goes into it that I could either talk about it for hours and hours on end, but the concept is so simple that I could just say to put the shadow where the light isn't, you dummy. And I feel like in a few of my earlier videos I did the former, where I went in depth in values and lighting in a way that made sense to me, and I imagined quite a few experienced artists, but kind of beat around the bush a little too much. So I want to make things simple. I want to make this so easy that I can just point to this video if someone new asks me how to shade something and just be like, do this, you little art baby. So in this video, we'll be going over in the most basic terms how I shade and light 99% of my digital illustrations today and break it down step by step into a process that is foolproof. Or at least I hope. This will work in any drawing program with a layer system, so if you don't have one with that, then get one, and if you're working traditionally, just do some hatching or mix some paints or something. So we have a drawing. This entire video hinges on the fact that you currently have done a sketch, lined it, base colored it, the whole shebang, and now you want to turn it from this into this. So let's hope you're right here. The first thing you want to do is very simply just take all the layers of the character you want to shade. In this case, I've already separated them into folders because there's a lot, but put them all neatly into a single folder because we want to be working on all of it at once. After that, we go outside the folder and we create a new layer. Change the layer mode to multiply for this layer and clip it to the folder that we just created, and this will be our shadow layer. And now inside that shadow layer, I want you to paint bucket the entire thing with a single color. Now before we continue, how do we know what color to fill that layer with? Well, that depends on your background. If the color of the background is blue, then add a blue tint. If red, then add a red tint, and so on. The color shouldn't be so strong that it overrides the colors underneath, and it shouldn't be too dark or light, which is entirely up to you. It should be just enough that it looks like it's a part of the environment, whether it's a solid color or anything else. So now that it's filled, we grab a brush and erase the parts that we want to be in light. Think of this as kind of painting in reverse. If you want to erase, then paint the shadow back in, and if you want to paint, then erase the lighter parts from the shadow. Brief explanation about light: if you're stuck, wherever you want your drawing to be lit, imagine a light source. In this case, I'll just put a ball on screen. Wherever that light source can directly see your drawing is the part that you want to be in light, and the parts of the multiply layer that you will be erasing. And that's it. That's simple. So simple that I encourage you to actually make more layers and try to figure out different shading schemes, as you never know which one could stand out the most. For example, even in this simple illustration, as you can see, I started out with a white background and light coming from on top or the sides, but found that a black background with an underlight would be much more interesting. So now we have the layer that will be essentially the shadow for the entire drawing, and to be honest, that's about 70% of the way there. But let's be real, there's so much more that can be done with this, so let's talk a little bit about that. Let's go a bit more in depth into lighting because it'll be relevant later, trust me. So right now with this shading layer, our light is basically colorless, which to be fair, if we just had a pure white background, it could work, but even then, there's something lacking. So basically, you just want to choose a color for your light. Now this color, unlike shadows, could honestly be anything you want. Now, due to color harmonies and things like that, there are some light colors that'll look better with shadows than other ones, but technically speaking, it could be any color and you could make it work with some tweaking. Generally speaking though, going by color temperatures, if you have a cool shadow, then you want a warm light and vice versa. So with all of that said, I'm going to assume that you chose a new color for your light. So I want you to create a new layer on top of the current multiply shadow layer and clip that onto the same folder. Then change it to color dodge mode. Short explanation about color dodge: it's basically a glow layer, but more emphasis on colors, hence the name. So when picking colors for this, you want it to be pretty dark so it doesn't burn out your retinas. And now I want you to go to your previous shadow layer and do the select all function on that layer, and then invert that selection and go back to your color dodge layer. I know it's a lot, just rewind this part. Finally, just like you did previously, just paint bucket fill the entire area that you've selected on the color dodge layer with the color of the light that you just chose. In this case, I wanted it to make an orange light. So with that, we just took our full shadow layer and selected everything that isn't on the layer and filled it with light. And with that, we have two layers for our lighting and shadows. And from now on, everything that we do will just be from those two layers. And I know what you're thinking. From now on, shouldn't this be it? Shouldn't we just merge, render, and move on? Well, normally that would be it and I would just end the video and move on with my life, but about a year ago, I stumbled upon a method that would actually take this process even further and really bring out colors in a way that I'm sure you've seen other professionals do already. And honestly, before this method, I would just kind of instinctively do this with the colors as I rendered, but over the past few months of using this, it's actually made things much easier, and I don't really have a name for it, so I'm just gonna call it Compositing, defined by Google, is the process and animation of combining multiple images or layers. So basically everything we do as digital illustrators. What I mainly attribute compositing to is adding effects like glows or sparks in this animation. So I just use it to describe whenever I'm adding certain colors or glows and effects to make an illustration pop. And honestly, it just kind of sounds like it fits, but word explanations aside, to put it simply, we're going to be adding extra colors inside the shadow layer. Now, what colors are they, you might ask? Well, that's where things can get complicated. So for the sake of this video, I'll try to keep things as basic as I can make it. So switch to using a soft airbrush and go back to your multiply layer. Now around the areas that are near the light, change the color to be closer to the color that you chose for that light, in this case orange, and airbrush that in, leaving a nicer gradient towards the light. Then go deeper into the shadow and increase the color or saturation of what you initially chose all the way back when creating the shadows in the first place. In this case, I chose blue, and then you just airbrush it in. Some places will have more, some will less, I don't know, I just kind of go by eye. Finally, if you're doing this on characters specifically, which I assume most people are, then in areas with lots of exposed skin, say the face, bring the color closer to a red or orange and airbrush that color in a little bit more. In this illustration, I actually chose not to do that because the light was right in the face and already orange, so I didn't want to oversaturate it too much. But with all that said and done, that's basically it. Sometimes I like to add other colors here and there to mix things up, or not follow this at all and go wild, which is what I meant by things getting complicated. But if you're already well versed in color theory, you probably know what to do, and if you want to learn more about how I choose my colors or values, then I have more in-depth videos dedicated to those. But that's it, you've successfully shaded and lit an illustration. Now of course we have to render everything, so we can't keep things disjointed like this, so duplicate the top two layers for each layer in the folder and merge them all. This part gets a little messy, especially if you have as many layers as I do right here, so I personally like to bind specific keys to the layer duplication and layer merge functions so that things go pretty fast. I do wish there was a function that just allowed you to apply your layer to every other layer in a folder, but I don't know, I checked a while ago and it wasn't there. Maybe Clip Studio added it in some point in time. At this point, the rest is up to you. You have a lighting and shading scheme and even a few colors to help you start rendering, so just get to it. I'll let myself render in the background a bit as I summarize what we did. So we took the base colors, put them in a folder, and added a multiply layer on top for shadows. We then erased the parts where we wanted light to be, and then added a color dodge layer on top to color that lighting. Then we went back to the multiply layer and airbrushed some colors in to give it some nice accents. And finally merged everything back together. And that's it, my current streamlined foolproof shading method. It's kind of funny considering how much I touch on lighting and shadows in my previous videos, yet never actually went step by step on how I actually do them. But here we are. Of course, this isn't the only best way ever to shade in the world, or even the exact way I'll be shading in a year or two from now, but it's the easiest and fastest way to get some good colors, shadows, and lighting that I know of right now. So I think just trying it out will get you some pretty good results, especially if you don't know where to start. If this video helped you out a bit, would appreciate a sub, you know, it'd be pretty cool. But if not, and it's 3 a.m. and you're watching this in your bed, then honestly, I wouldn't check down there. I'd sleep on the couch for the next few nights. So if I were you, I would sub. Just put it right here. Just put it in my proverbial palm that I'm reaching out at the screen at my recording studio. Recording just my mic, and